with Infrastructure Investment Division, and I'm going to Senator Mackenzie, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've got questions around the Murray Basin Rail Project. Have we got the right officials at the table?
Yes, Senator.
Yep. Great. My understanding is that this is a project that we've committed $240 million. It was supposed to be completed in 2018. But my understanding from stakeholders within Victoria is that it's the state government that has meant this project hasn't been delivered, and that there's a business case that we've been waiting for from the Victorian state government. Can I have an understanding from the department whether that business case from the state Labor government in Victoria has been received?
Senator, it's my understanding that we haven't received that business case, but I'll just confirm with Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
Is that correct, Mr. Smith?
Yes, Phil Smith, First Assistant Secretary, Infrastructure Investment Division. We haven't got the business case from 2015. Victoria's been working on a review of that business case, and I'll just confer with my colleague.
Sorry, Mr. Smith. Yeah. We haven't received a business case from the state Labor government that we've been waiting on since 2015. Did I understand correctly?
Yes, that's correct.
So we've been waiting for this for 5 years.
Now, the project's been obviously ongoing and being delivered for a number of years, but there was a review following the audit, the Victorian audit, and that review is, I guess, outlining a number of options, and governments are considering those options.
So our government's considering those options, or the Victorian state government's considering the options?
Well, it'd be fair to say I think that there's constant dialogue between officials about the project itself.
Can you give me an update of the project as you see it? No, I haven't been.
Yes, certainly. I might also get Ms Natty to come to the table for a bit of detail.
Thank you.
So, but basically, Maryborough to Ararat was re-railed in 2017. Mm-hmm. Maryborough to Denali, sorry for the pronunciation, was converted to a dual gauge. Denali to Yelta, again moved from broad gauge to a standard gauge. Oyen, again forgive my pronunciation.
No, Oyen's right.
To Murrayvale, again converted from broad gauge to standard gauge, and there's a couple of other lines that have yet to be started.
So my understanding, and that's why I'm here, Mr. Smith, is that conversion to standard gauge and upgrade works Mildura to Denali, Murrayville to Oyen, Maryborough to Ararat is incomplete. Are you telling me it's complete?
No, I think there are elements that still need to be revisited.
Right. What about stage 3, Maryborough to Ballarat?
Might get Miss Natty to provide the details on that.
Senator Mackenzie, Sarah Natty, Assistant Secretary, Victoria, Tasmania and South Australian Branch. The Maryborough to Ararat section of this project was re-railed and reopened in 2017, so it's complete.
It's completed. And Ballarat to Geelong, stage 4?
Ballarat to Geelong is not part of this project scope.
Right. And the Sea Lake to Menangatang conversion to standard gauge, is that part of this project?
Denali to Sea Lake and Denali to Menangatang are both for future consideration.
For future consideration. Right. And just to be very, very clear, you have not received a business case from the review business case from the Victorian State Government?
That's right, Senator.
So when was the last business case you received from the Victorian State Government?
I don't have that information, Senator, but I can say that
You don't have it, or you'll get it for me?
I can get it for you.
Thank you. So sorry, you were going to go on?
Oh, the review of the 2015 business case completed by the Victorian Government we received on the 26th of May this year.
Okay, 26th of May, we've got the review of their original 2015 business case in light of the Victorian Auditor General's
That's right.
report. Can you just, for the committee, give us the highlights out of that Auditor General's report from Victoria?
So the review identified that there was 174.3 million of remaining funds for the project from Australian Government and Victorian Government commitments to date. It identified a range of work items that could be constructed as options packages, and it highlights specific track upgrades and other infrastructure.
Okay. So what changes have been made to the revised business case from the original? You say there's a suite of options. Can you outline the different options, please?
There's options that include the minimum scope, which is Victoria's preferred and original option.
So what does that look like? Does that deliver on the intent of this project?
Senator, it completes the signalling at Ararat Junction, and it also re-rails 88 kilometres of track between Ararat and Maryborough.
But it doesn't do what this project was meant to do. Which was actually service grain communities right through the Mallee, getting that grain to port.
That's right. That includes full standardisation of the rail line, Senator.
Yep. So the options put forward by the Victorian State Government don't actually fulfil that? Is that?
The option that is the preferred option from Victoria does not fulfil that, Senator.
Right. And how much money has Victoria spent not fulfilling this project's intent?
To date, the Victorian Government has contributed $109.06 million.
And how much has the federal government contributed?
55 million, Senator.
5 million.
For that particular minimum scope piece, yes.
Right, but for the total project?
Let me just consult my notes, Senator.
Thank
I won't be a moment. The total project cost is 440 million. The Australian Government has contributed 240.2 million, which is 55% of the total cost. The state has contributed 199.8 million. And of that, 174.3 million, as I said, remains.
Right. In terms of the revised business case with options, can you provide me? You received it on the 26th of May. When will we be looking at actually having an understanding of what the revised business case is and moving forward with the completion of the project?
We're hopeful to have some further information on that before the end of this year. We have some draft proposals that are still subject to discussion between the Australian and Victorian governments.
Right. So are we going to go out and consult on this revised business case, given that it doesn't fulfil the original intent of the project if we go with Victoria's preferred option?
That would certainly be the Australian government's preference.
But that wouldn't be taking place till next year?
That's right.
Early next year. Is the Victorian government seeking additional money from the federal government?
There was a request for us to consider additional money.
How much?
The request, I'm just checking with Mr Smith. I think it was...
I think we'll need to take the detail of that on notice.
Really? You don't know how much the state Labor government's wanting to throw good money after bad for this project?
Just go and ask more.
No, I just off the top of my head, I can't see it in our notes, the actual quantum they've asked for.
We can come back to you before the end of the session.
That would be
like,
really,
Senator.
really good if you could do that. Thank you. My understanding is that the Auditor General's report also highlighted issues around governance around this project. Could you outline some of the concerns raised by the Victorian Auditor General?
I don't have the full Auditor General's report in front of me, but my recollection of that, Senator, is that the concerns were around the quality of the works, and there's been some disputes between V-Line and the contractor, which meant the work had to cease. So my sense is that the original review of the work that had to happen on the Murray Basin freight rail lines was done as a desktop review and not as a physical review, and that resulted in some of the works being substandard and therefore requiring additional consideration by government.
What changes has our department made in light of this in terms of working with state governments and ensuring that when we do partner with them on projects of this magnitude and need, that we can have confidence that they've got internal procedures within their own department to give confidence to taxpayers' dollars being spent.
Sorry, Senator. We have regular engagement with the Victorian Government over all our projects, and on, as you say, projects of this magnitude, we have steering committees and working groups set up.
But that didn't help here, did it? I'm assuming we just didn't set up steering committees as a result of the Auditor General's report. I'm assuming we've got steering committees to oversee these sort of projects ad nauseum. But the steering committee didn't actually assist with the failure of governance around this project, did it?
Senator, it was ahead of my time, but I'm very happy to provide the information on the previous governance arrangements on notice.
Mr Smith, mate, do you have any views on the steering committees we have set up to oversee and work with state governments on projects like this actually did not assist at all in identifying or dealing with the failure of governance when it came to this project?
I think certainly my experience, and I've been in the role since January, is the various steering committees actually go through a reasonable amount of detail, and for certain projects we've actually got people working in working groups with them to go through that and question that, but ultimately delivery of the projects is a matter for the states.
Oh no, I understand that. Did the steering committee around this project identify, prior to the Auditor General's report from Victoria, identify any issues with the governance of this project?
As Ms Natty alluded to, we'd have to take on notice the actual governance for this particular project. This project is quite an old project.
I'm really interested in whether the steering committees we've got set up to liaise with the state governments around the implementation and rollout of projects like this, did they identify the issues highlighted by the Victoria Auditor General's report? According to the department's website, the project's expected to finish in 2023, 5 years after the original completion date, probably about nearly a decade after it was announced and first envisaged. Given page 8 of the Auditor General's report from March this year described the Labor government's project planning and management as deficient, what changes are we going to make internally about how we work with the state government to ensure that it does actually get completed on time?
Well, following obviously government's consideration about any additional scope for the projects and also including whether there's any additional funding, we'd ensure that we've got appropriate governance arrangements in place with Victoria to make sure we monitor the progress.
So there'll be changes to the existing, given that governance arrangements were deemed inappropriate?
I imagine there'll be changes to the documentation received.
Okay. The VFF's repeatedly called for details of the project to be unveiled so that our grains industry can review the business case to make sure the options being put forward by the Victorian State Government are actually going to fulfil the original intent of this project. When will the business case be released publicly so that it can actually be assessed by the industry this project's supposed to support?
Release of business case is actually a matter for government, so we'll have to take that on notice.
Minister?
Happy to take that on notice, please.
Thank you. The Rail Freight Alliance highlights that this project, which was supposed to see freight getting to port quicker, has actually, despite not being finished, it's still actually seen timelines blow out on the delivery of freight existing. Do you have any comment to make around that? That, you know, pre this project, we had trains, for instance, Mildura to Geelong taking 11 hours, they're now taking 15 hours. I mean, on what planet do we actually think that that's an acceptable outcome after spending $240 million of Australian taxpayers' money? We don't have the project delivered and we've actually blown out freight times to boot.
Senator, at this point, I think it's fair to say that we're working with the Victorian Government to try to get them to move to completion of this project.
Completion as first envisaged or completion with their preferred option?
Well, I think that's the subject of discussion between governments.
Are we going to end up spending, what, another $240 million on a failed project because the state Victorian government can't get its act together?
Senator, I think you're asking me to speculate, Senator.
I am asking you to speculate. Thank you for highlighting that. I'm just wanting to understand the standard gauge versus the dual gauging that's going on throughout the project. But do I take it that, Ms Nutty, that given the revised business case that the Victorian state government has put forward, has that changed the original gauging? No?
So, Senator, the approach hasn't been agreed between the state and the Commonwealth yet.
Right. When do we think that's going to happen? This is a project that's been promised a very, very long time ago, with nearly $250 million, $250 million, of Australian taxpayer money going to the project. There's a lot of frustration in the grains industry about the failure of both governments to get their act together and get this delivered. What comfort?
I'm keen to get an approach and an agreement between the two governments as soon as we possibly can.
Thank you. Can I be kept advised about any potential movement at that station? And before we agree as a government to a preferred option of the state Labor government that doesn't actually deliver for the grains industry in Victoria, I'm of a very strong view that that would be perceived incredibly negatively by the Victorian National Party. Thank you.
Are you done, sir?